and check in with you because you joined when I first started the program. So like I would just love to see, I'm so curious to see where you're at, how you're doing.
Yeah.
So I would love to start off with tell me about you. What's your name? Where are you from? How did you get into the bridal industry?
Okay, awesome. I'm Alexis. I do both hair and makeup. So I've been doing hair and makeup for since like 2017. I actually have a degree in marketing and mass communications and then a minor in sport management. So it was sole focus before getting this industry was like probably going into like sports and entertainment marketing or like working for Lululemon or Nike. But hair and makeup had always been something I was super passionate about. My mom started up in the salon industry, actually only managed, never did cut and color. And so she came from the management side, came from like being able to provide an experience that she wanted to be able to offer to help like women, people have a great experience in the industry. But I never thought I'd go into it, but I grew up within the era of like Victoria's Secret Angels where everyone had the beautiful bouncy like hair. I was always the one that like would always be applying clip-in extensions and like back in the day, even with clip-in extensions, it's funny because that always ties into a lot with like my brand because I do clip-in extension rentals and I'm always working with clip-in extensions. And but I was always the go-to girl in high school and college for hair and makeup. And so I got to the point where the girls I was playing college softball with were asking like, hey, can you do my like wedding hair and makeup kit? And then I was in a sorority and then the girls in the sorority, I'd always volunteer and be like, hey, can I do your hair and makeup for a special event? Just, it was always so fun. And then I had started off actually in direct sales with makeup. And so in the state of Oregon at that time, you didn't need to be licensed for hair or makeup, but I live in Washington now. But technically, in the state of Washington, you do need to be licensed. So I came back home from college, and there's a bunch of photographers in my area that I pretty much grew up with that were like, hey, we need a hair makeup artist. So I had started off dabbling, learning with bridal hair and makeup, just like as I went, like working with friends. And I think because of my college background of things with playing sports, I thrived in like high adversity situations. So being able to like handle like high stressful situations, I loved it. Going into photo shoot hair and makeup, it's a little bit slower, but when it was like 2017, majority of people in my area, like the gals that were like makeup artists were because in the state of Washington, you don't need to be licensed for hair makeup or like for makeup specifically, aesthetics or cosmetology, but you do need to for hair. So when I was starting off, my mom had always said, she was like, hey, like, I'm happy you went the route of getting your like business degree. But if you decide one day you want to go more into hair, you definitely need to get licensed. Being someone that had ran a salon, she was like, I would hate for something to happen down the road for you. As she saw me like getting into more with hair and makeup and being really passionate about it. So I looked more into it. And then I stuck with like hair and makeup as like a side hustle while like nannying full time for a couple years out of college. And so I think it was until about like 2 years out, I think it was 2019 or 2020, I decided to go like full time and then also go into cosmetology school. So um I'm trying to think, I had to go back through my income for what I was making around then. But I think because I was doing both weddings and photo shoot hair and makeup, I was hitting 100,000. Um, but that was like then going full time of like not having any like days off. Like I would just take clients like back to back to back or whenever I could. And because we turned a room at my parents' house into like a home studio for me, it made it easy for me to sleep in the same place, not in the same room, but like same building and then be able to like just go down and work with clients. Now
Yeah.
I'm in a place where I have my own apartment with my boyfriend, a little townhouse, and then I still go back and freelance out of my parents' home. I have a studio that we've like renovated, but regardless of that, I'm in a place now where I'm just like so happy because from even the growth for what I've made from I joined the Bridal Boss Academy in I think it was like October 10th of 2023. That was a time when I was transitioning where I was like, okay, like I just become an S corp. I definitely was making over 100K. Um in years past, but I wrote down like a progression of like 2023 to 2024 to 2025 for like what I'm projected to do. And it's a huge jump. And like what I've been able to see is that was shifting my focus into um a bridal focus. I'm not bridal only right now. And I've chosen to continue to do both hair and makeup. My income's pretty much not only like doubled, but I've seen a transition and shift into like the type of jobs I accept, which has allowed me and the type of jobs of doing more weddings. So it allows me to pack as much like income and like clients as I can in one day. And it's actually less work for me, surprisingly, in a day's work. But then obviously we have all of our admin work that leads up to those days. But it's allowed me where like this is the first August in since doing hair and makeup since 2017 where I've been able to like actively like take 2 days off a week at least, try and prioritize to have like Sundays off if I'm not booked with a wedding, and then be able to price myself appropriately where like my photo shoot hair and makeup pricing is starting to become more competitive with like my wedding pricing because I'm at a point where I built a lot of my clientele actually with like seniors in high school for hair and makeup. And a lot of people in the area have always been like, you know what, you have to be at this like low rate for things. And I was like, well, it doesn't make sense for me to still do a lot of work for such a like shorter price point for things. And then the problem that I was seeing, and being someone that does both hair and makeup in the industry with photo shoots, is if you are in an industry like or like an area like the Pacific Northwest, a lot of our jobs are reliant on weather. And what I was getting to the point was it was really hard in years past with not taking on like the jobs that I do as much for like weddings, with photo shoots, where if weather would cancel things out or like photographers were just super unreliable, then your income shot for the day. And I was taking on like literally like 4 to 5 clients in one day. Right now, I'm about six services max in one day for photo shoot hair and makeup because they're about like an hour long at my studio space, but I can take in about like $1,000 a day just for like my in studio rates. So it's been able to help me be able to understand like, okay, like what are my non-negotiables? Like what do I have to like make at least in order to like be gone a day, even if it's bridal only. But I've even been able to shift and understand like, okay, if I'm taking on like weddings Friday through like Sunday at least, what are like my high peak rates for what I can offer and what I'm booked at, and then just my weekday rates if I like decide to take on. I feel like my like photo shoot hair and makeup has now become like my side income on top of
Yeah.
like full-time income with like
Yeah.
weddings.
Wait,
So,
I'm
and then
curious.
I'm someone that doesn't have a team. So I train a girl, but it's not something that I like. I'm not like an agency, so I don't send out girls to jobs. If I'm
Yes.
taking on weddings, I'm fully doing weddings myself, which I would love to like not fully do one day, but it's okay. Yeah.
Well, I'm curious. So you said you were pretty like split in years prior, like prior to
Mhm.
2024 of like you doing photo shoot, hair and makeup and bridal. Would you say
Yeah.
now you're more doing bridal? Like you still do photo shoot, hair and makeup, but you're able to do more bridal. It sounds like you're working less.
I'm working a lot less, but I
Yeah.
still take photo shoot hair and makeup. But like for example, like statistics wise, like 2023 versus 2024. Let me see here. I wonder if I'll send you a link to this. I'm like I could share the screen, but like in 2023, oh my God, my pricing was like so freaking low. And I'm trying to think, I think I was booking out a year to 2 years out. I don't do 2 year booking out now. I do year by year. And I think it's saved me so much because I feel like we get in this weird imposter syndrome where we're like, oh, I see people charging these rates. How I don't think I could ever charge those rates. And
Yeah.
I feel like before Bridal Boss Academy, and then also I'm really happy I did this, and talking with like my CPA and then becoming an S corp of like trying to figure out what does like my paycheck want to look like for me? What does like retirement want to look like for me? So that's when I like started to get to the point of being like, okay, I can't sit here and continue to justify what my pricing is because I want to keep and maintain clients in the area because I want to be like still competitive, but also at the same time too, I feel like with the years of experience and the continued education that I do, I'm like, now I cannot not justify my pricing where I'm at now. It's a huge jump. So in 2023, I only had 31 weddings. And then I had $60,000 in like income that I had come in for weddings specifically. Like I went through HoneyBooks and added everything up. And then
Mhm.
in 2024, which I'm pumped about, I had 52 weddings and I did $122,000.
Shut
So,
up.
yeah. And that's not even like
Wow.
double the amount of weddings. That was literally like, okay, so again, 52 weddings. The other one was 31 weddings. That is literally double the income. Like
Literally double the
20 more.
income. Double
Yeah.
the income, and you're not even working that much more. Like, because
Yeah.
previously you were doing so many photo shoots, and now you're doing a little bit more in weddings, but you're
Yeah.
doubling your income. That's
Yeah.
insane. I'm so proud of you.
And then for right now, where I'm at for 2025, right now I have about, let me see, one, two, about 18 weddings on my books right now, and already projected out to have, let's see here, 41,000. So
Wow.
I'm like, what?
Wow.
So
That
a part of it does go to contractors for contractor pay, but again, that's like still I think even with HoneyBooks, a lot of the time with HoneyBooks, they don't like incorporate tips right away into like your like projected revenue. So tips, I do get some tips here and there, but yeah.
I know HoneyBook does that where you can do like the add the tip on there. But I'm
Mhm.
so curious. So, okay, so you must have really increased your rates. So since joining Bridal Boss Academy, how many times were you able to increase your rates?
So that's one thing I was trying to go through with all of my, I like cringe. I was like typing in like all of my rates from like 2023 to 2024. And I have a Google Excel sheet. So what I did was I put like all my dates, my like brides that I have, what they were booking for packages wise. And it was like, I feel like I did not have the same structure for what I do now. So now what I do is I give everyone like I have my packages for things. I used to do a la carte for things.
Our
And
package
my
is
rates
working for
like
you.
oh, super good. The hard part is that I had to navigate how am I going to do it for both hair and makeup?
Mhm.
And at first I was like, shit, like, am I going to have to switch and do like hair only or makeup only? Because in the grand scheme of things, like hair or makeup for booking and you're doing packages is way easier to follow. But my brides, I still have brides that like book it no problem with having my starting packages. So like, right, what I did was I went off of like what like my minimum would be to book for a wedding day. So I give brides, couple different options and I can still also cater toward bridal only packages. We just substitute out for the time of like someone's service for like an additional guest service for like touch-up hours. So I do cater that way. But for prior, I was anywhere between like for bridal hairstyling and makeup. So I have my pricing actually the same for both hair and makeup for like services. So in 2023, like just throughout the year before going into 2024, I was anywhere around 325 for a day of per service. So it was about 325 to 400. So you'd be looking at like what is it, like 650 and then 400, like 800. So for that, and then I'm trying to think, I was like looking at a couple of these and I mean, it was like a lot of these weddings were still like 8 services that I was doing. I need to go through and like almost compare how much I was doing on average with that one and like what an average one, the same booking rate for this.
Yeah.
Um, but and then bridesmaids, I was like 140 a service. And then I'm trying to think of anything else at that. If I brought in an assistant, I it made me like honestly like dread having assistants because what I was doing is I was doing like $150 rate and it wasn't even to compensate for my time. It also like included in their travel to things too. And I'm like, I'm literally losing money when I bring on an assistant to come in because they're taking away so many services of mine. And it was like good getting below my minimum. So right now I protect myself where if I bring on an assistant, it doesn't drop below like what my minimum is, or if it drops below my minimum, it accounts for the service I'd be losing out on. So that was a mistake I was doing in the past, looking at all that. So yeah, 140 versus what I transitioned into doing this past year. So for 2024, some of them were booked off of like a year to 2 years out notice. So when I'd have those come around, I was like, why did I do this? And now that's like, again, why I go around each year now where I'm like, okay, I don't want to do that anymore.
Right.
So on average, what I was looking at for 2025 after like shifting, I think I was right around before I shifted to you or like shifted into your program. I think it was like 150, 160. And then I was like, screw it, I'm going 185 per bridesmaid. Huge jump like that, like 40 to like 45 jump for to like 185 makes a huge difference, especially if I had like a assistant I was bringing on that because assistant rates can charge anywhere between like I think like 110 to maybe 155, going up to 185 had covered a ton for especially the communication for what I was doing to like a little bit of an overhead for things, experience of the gal that I was bringing on. So I've had some times where I had to like call in someone who was like super, super talented that ran their own business like last second that like didn't just pick up jobs from other people. So having a little bit of a higher rate had protected me in that little pocket for things. And then what my pricing went up to, I think consistently looking at a lot of my pricing, I was like, 800 to finally jumping to 1,000. I feel like last year I got to so 500 per bridal service. So it was 1,000 just for the bridal service for hair and makeup. Because what I do is I spend 3 hours with bride alone as it is, 2.5 to 3 hours. So that really starts to max me out when I start to have like a minimum of like 4 services for those days. But that's what I shifted to. And I got like pretty much, I think it was like maybe up until about like June and May. And I was like, screw it. I'm literally just going to go from that like 700, $800 range to like 1,000. And then my trial runs ended up going up to, I'm 250 per trial run. So I'm 500. I make for my trial run paid out day of the trial run service, which was really nice because it then spaced out my services throughout the year. And then I'm trying to think of anything else with that one. I ended up going up to a rate instead of doing $1 per mile round trip. I ended up going up to like $100 per hour I'm on the road. And I start at that. So even if people are local in the area and it's like maybe a 20 to 30-minute drive, I'm like, if I'm gonna be leaving my studio space for a weekend booking, like we're gonna be doing it this way. And then yeah, I'm just trying to think. And then I do extension rentals. I actually have everything invested from like a range of like 16 inches to like 20 inches in extensions. And then my extension rentals are at 125. I do anything between like Bellamy to Luxie to Cashmere for my extension rentals. Some are from Amazon too as well. But I actually found that I need to do a statistics of my brides. I would say a good like portion of my brides either do hand-tied extensions, buy clip and extension rentals, or rent extensions. So
A lot of
that's
women
one
do
thing I was
that.
like getting up through. So I brought in probably around like at least like $2,000 in like sales like from extension rentals. Now again, a lot of them had been like purchased last year and I had been building up the year before, but I think it's going to really pay off even more for 2025. So, but
Your
that's where I
20,
think it's really important.
yeah.
What?
Yeah, I was gonna say your 2025 seems like it's just gonna take off. Like if this is
Mhm.
how your 2024 started, like it's gonna end, like, and you already have so many bookings going into 2025, like
Yeah.
what did you find was kind of like the biggest piece that you feel led to you being able to, I know it was more weddings, but it feels like you're working less and earn more.
I feel like mindset wise, I don't know this directly answers that. Well, I mean it's going to answer it, but I think one thing that had shifted me mentally was I am now in a pretty serious relationship with my partner and we've had conversations about like, okay, do you have a 401k? Do you have a Roth IRA? What is your paycheck? And can you spend more time with me? Like, can we have more weekends together? And I remember having a lot of frustrations in years past of being like, I would get really frustrated at like photographers for canceling or rescheduling due to like a really stupid excuse, or a client being like, "Oh, I have like cheer photos on the weekend, or camp, and I have to move it to another weekend." And I would look at my dates and being like, I could have had a wedding booked on this. Like weddings, I never get canceled. I think last year, honestly, statistics wise, and as I'm the sole owner of my business and I work directly with a lot of my brides, I have a ton of communication day in and day out. And I love that communication portion of it. So that's why also I love that shift of going like more focused on bridal. But that shift of like those reasonings of being like, okay, like I have to get serious about like, what does my paycheck look like for me? What does my retirement want to look like for me? What do I need to do in order to get there? What do I need to be bringing in? Um, Profit first had helped a lot. I saw that you had implemented profit first into your course, which I really love and I appreciate.
Um,
Um, and also that shift too, I think around the same time I was like joining with your program, I just taken a course with someone that had done, in order to like find success in this industry, you had to run teams. I love doing services, but I'm someone that I can't get out of the game right now doing this, but being someone that also listens to a ton of podcasts, most people who run salons or run teams, you can't be fully doing hair and makeup in this industry and while running a team with the success of things. And so I'm not ready to jump out of it, but I talk with a ton of gals that run teams, and they're like, you are still producing numbers that I'm producing with like several girls on my team. So that's been a really cool, like, kind of aha moment with things. But yeah, just the shift of being able to space out like my income throughout the year, having the communication that leads up to that, justifying like, again, those weekends for things. So, and then I no longer travel like I used to for photo shoots. I'm all in studio for my like home studio situation. But yeah, even having a little space in home studio, I know a lot of people like want to have the um what is it, brick and mortar type of like studio
I wish I never
situation.
did it. You're so
It
lucky.
is very expensive. So that's one thing I was like, God, it would be a dream of mine one day. But being someone now has been trying to like break down again, what am I making? What can I pay myself out paycheck wise, keeping my expenses low?
Mhm.
It's been a really nice focus and shift with going more bridal at that. But yeah, I would say like the big conversation is like becoming more like financially literate, and not feel as embarrassed to talk about like what my income is and like what I can be better at. So
Yeah, I feel like it was almost like a mindset shift of like putting your CEO hat on. Cause like
yeah.
you and me kind of really vibe on like the stats, the financials being like financially literate. Like we were like, I feel like we're the same with that. So I love that you implemented like the profit first and everything. And like you
Mhm.
really break everything down because I feel like a lot of people in our industry sometimes I was talking with someone else, they're like, they see it as fun. Like this is a fun job and it can be fun, but
Mhm.
you have to have that CEO hat on of like, no, you need to make sure you're making this. Like you went to the S Corp, which I think is so financially smart. And something I
Mhm.
love that you went inside the program and you took what worked for you and you left what didn't. So like if you're in the program, you know that I went from hair and makeup to just hair. And I love that
Mhm.
you're like, I still love hair and makeup and I'm going to do both. And you made it work for you. So on that
Yeah.
specific piece, how do you find work doing hair and makeup is working for you and how you like you don't have a team?
So with doing both, I feel like okay, so this is a tricky one because again, doing both hair and makeup, you have to have a diverse skill range, especially for like the styles that you offer, and makeup as well, but then still honing down on like what are you consistently doing. So I know I can be better about posting on social media. I do love social media, don't get me wrong, but because I take out a lot of photo shoots throughout the weekday, it does take away from the time I can be like doing content. And I was like pulling up my conversions that I can share with you when it comes to like where I'm getting people from. But doing both, it's allowed me to be able to. I was talking to Rachel about this too. I can't remember her last name. Super talented hair and makeup artist. It's in your program too.
In
But
California?
yeah.
Rachel Lusk.
Yes, yes.
Black hair, yeah, yeah,
But it's like taking it, we're able to take on like less services in one day to be able to like have like all my starting bridal packages start with the bridal glam experience. So
yeah.
it's like sole focus on like the bridal's ex or the bride's experience herself. But even with my starting packages, I feel like on average, even though my pricing is higher for both hair and makeup for bride, again, I'm taking on less services throughout the day. I am booked at my like bride only for or my bride first for hair and makeup and then two additional services. That's like a 1400 like starting package. And my other one with bride, the choice, I allow my clients to have the choice of bride for hair or makeup and then five additional services or four additional services. So it's about a minimum of five. I actually don't get booked a lot for that, which is very surprising. I've seen a shift of a lot of clients want to not like book like two different teams, or they're wanting to have a smaller booking when they do reach out to me. So that's what I've attracted. Um, Although I can book like some larger parties. Like I've had a couple. I have one coming up in November where it's me for bridal hair and makeup. I have four additional services, but I have three other people working the wedding with me, and it's a $6,000 job starting with that.
Wow.
So it's a lot. So I'm very grateful for that. But yeah, I would say shifting for bridal hair or makeup, a lot of my content's a sole focus on like the bridal hair and makeup, like service portion, the results, the outcome for things. I'm trying to think of anything else. When it's hair and makeup only, you have to keep in mind you're not gonna be able to do like the 7 to 8 services is going to be too much on the body. That's what I've been able to find with that when you do like a sole focus on bridal hair and makeup. And then with the like again starting like two additional add-ons. I also have been able to in Pacific Northwest, we get a lot of elopements. So sometimes I do like a special rate for like my weekday ones. And that's the nice thing about taking like my pricing off my website, my starting pricing on my website. But I took off my per service off my website because when I have people that reach out that I can like throw out like a customized quote for them, especially if they want to like do an elopement just for themselves and I travel to them or they come to me.
I love that
So that's
you're
usually the
getting
average.
I love that you're getting smaller bridal parties and more like
Mhm.
bridal only because I feel like with your messaging with the packages that you just described, that's exactly who you're going to attract in, which like is kind of a good thing if you don't always want to be having to bring on additional people to help out because I'm so glad
Mhm.
that you realize like, oh yeah, doing 8 hair and makeup is a lot. That's a lot on the body. You're exhausted after, you know?
Well, you have that burnout, and it's like working in
Yeah.
years past when I was doing so much with photo shoots and resenting myself with how much I was taking on with that, and then hair and makeup, and then also traveling with photo shoots. Like again, I don't travel really much anymore for photo shoots, which is so nice because like for one person, like I was making like 250 or 300 for what I was charging, and I was like, damn, like I could literally make that in like just two bridesmaids in one setting, you just 45 minutes back to back to back to back.
Right,
So yeah, exactly that, and just this I've just seen a shift in transition of not wanting to feel like I'm burning myself, but also being realistic with brides where I'm like, here's your timeline. Like, here's an example of a timeline for what you're looking for. Realistically, do you want to have me book someone else, or you can go out and book someone else yourself?
yeah.
I find a lot of people actually like have me book someone else, and I make sure my rates reflect that into the work that I'm going to put into to book out an additional hairstylist and makeup artist.
Yeah.
So I definitely have seen
Um,
a bigger shift though too on a lot less tipping as my pricing has gone up. I don't have a problem with that. I just know that that's a huge conversation in the industry. I don't do auto gratuity. I think gratuity is like earned. It's like not something that should be expected, even with higher like rates to things. But that's where like again, if I need to like price and like pay like a contractor out like appropriately, I'll do it that way. So yeah.
I totally agree with you on that. I would love to talk about it if you want for a sec. I
Mhm.
loved when we were first in the program and you came in with that amazing bridal experience of the bride who was like, "No, you're too expensive." And then
Oh yeah, I remember that.
you came back and didn't she like hide you. Like she wound up booking with
He
you.
literally hid me.
Yeah, but
So,
at first it was like a bridal objection, and everybody was like, she's a red flagger. And I was like, I don't think so. Like, I
yeah.
would love if you could share that experience.
So now that I have gone up in pricing, I'll get a mix. It's really funny. So she was like the start of the year where I was like, okay, let me try and pull up what I like pulled out for this one. It was like one of like my January brides. And that's one thing that I'm trying to find the balance with like my like lower time of the season or my slower time of the season, like what financially makes most sense for me to like show up to do a job.
Hmm.
And then also like what's like, yeah, what's worth my time, like what's worth like also some of these gals that are like I don't say like red flags, but when they're like bring up all these points, they're like, I want you to do this, I want you to do this. It's like knowing you have to price yourself appropriately because in the long run, we can start to see certain things that they say or do, or the things that they were requesting. It's going to be more than what you think. So I'm really happy I priced myself the way that I did then. And the pricing, Kelly, let's see here, or no, it wasn't Kelly. So I ended up making $1,670 from that booking. And it was literally just for her for hair and makeup and then one additional hairstyling service. So I found that she's not the first one this past year that's been like, okay, you're a lot more than what I would think. Because when you start to take your pricing off of your website, but I think because I also put on my starting pricing, it's kind of rolled out those people that are so sticker shocked. Um,
I love that you
so I
have the
think
starting price. Like you didn't
yes,
totally take it out, you have the starting price. I love that.
yes. And with this gal's booking, so yeah, she had booked me. She came as a referral from other people, and she was in her like 50s or so, first marriage, and she was wanting to have this whole like experience for things, but then was wanting to do it on like this budget for things. And I didn't know that with the budget until she had responded back to me saying like, this is a bit out of my budget. And then it was really odd because at that time when she'd responded back to me, she was like, yeah, I mean, was going back and forth between your emails over the course of the holidays. And people were like, oh my gosh, you're crazy to like book at that pricing for things. I feel like most of the response I actually get now is I'll have gals that politely respond back and they'll either be like, you know what, like, I you're on my budget, but I love your work. If my budget and my response usually is like if your budget changes and you want to be able to like work with me and be able to get like this vision for what you have, don't hesitate to reach back out to me. Like if your date's still available, I'll reopen up your contract and your invoice of things. And I actually have had a couple people reach back out and do that. Some of them have been like, okay, I've had to like really sit down with my partner, talk about like my needs, my wants, and you being one of my top vendors for this. And um, even with some of those brides coming back, they've been some great referrals. They've even like tipped on top of those things. Again, a lot of the time I don't end up getting tipped, which is totally fine. But it's the gals, some of them I was like, I wasn't expecting you to end up doing that when you were like, hey, I'm
Yeah.
trying to figure out how I can do this. But I have found that if someone wants it bad enough, they'll do whatever it takes to make it happen to book. And we are so limited with our dates for booking that you don't need to drop your pricing with this fear of like, am I going to get this filled? Now, there are some dates like a Tuesday or Thursday wedding where I'm like, okay, I could figure something out, maybe like make something happen, but I'm not going to sacrifice like what I can like potentially make, even if what I'm doing with like photo shoots in one day.
Mhm.
So she was one that was very appreciative like of the experience with everything. It was really funny. She like left a review and everything, was really happy with her services. I've had really good retention with all of my brides this past year. Even with the hard part is that sometimes with your budget brides, you'll have gals that because I do touch-up hours, I found in years past when I was actually a lower pricing, I was going through some of my like bookings where I was like making like $2,000 and I thought it was a really good booking, where I'd like discounted my touch-up hours because they're like, oh, I want to do this, but I'm on this type of budget. Like, what can you make happen this way? I have found that you're going to find your clientele, especially if you have your perceived value out there and you're constantly putting out like images of your work or your photos or videos, and then you have good referrals, you'll have those girls that will book you at the rates that you are set when your perceived value is there, and they won't even question your rates. And so I love that with a lot of my like brides. Right now, I'm seeing that a lot with my 2024 bookings. And being that I'm almost like 20 weddings booked out for like next year, I'm not having a ton of people question things with the more that I do on social media. I feel like that's one of the
Yeah.
biggest components. I feel like a shift that I've made over this past year, letting people in with like behind the scenes of like how my experience is a little bit more unique than others. And then the transition of like the from point A to point B. I have really liked doing a more thorough breakdown of my pricing and like service guide. I think that that's one thing that has helped me a lot with people better understanding my value there. So yeah.
Yeah, I just loved how, like, even though some people might see that as like, oh, she's a budget bride, like, you
Mhm.
still had the confidence of like, no, this is my value. Like, I'm not going to drop my rates. And
Yeah.
she actually wound up paying it. And I just felt like confidence oozing from you.
Yeah.
And it was just so nice and so sweet to see that, like, you weren't going to drop your rates just because somebody asked for, a discount, or she was like saying how her budget was like the enemy, and you
Mhm.
you stuck to your rates, and she wound up paying that and being a great client. So like, budget
Mhm.
brides aren't always, bad people, red flaggers at the
Yeah.
beginning. But I would love to know, I know you do Honeybook. I would
Yeah.
love to know if you used any pieces of like the email templates, or if you saw any success with that piece.
So with the email templates, I was already doing some portions, like some stuff that was similar to like what you had like encouraged us to do.
Mhm.
I'm trying to think of like the biggest shift that I've had with Honeybooks this past year. Yes, I feel like what I have that's helped me even when it comes to like my service and pricing guide. Uh, I have my starting packages for things when like, so I have like a full workflow of things.
Yeah.
Because with like my schedule with doing photo shoots, being able to have time off, transition between like weddings and everything, even
Yeah.
with my photo shoots with Honeybooks, and like one-off appointments. Let's say, for example, if someone wanted to book like rehearsal dinner, hair, makeup,
Mhm.
or like engagement photo shoot, hair, and makeup, because all of those, I don't do trial runs on those types of like occasions.
Right.
Someone can, but I'm like, that's the look that you're getting for your wedding day. If not, we can make tweaks and changes.
Right.
But with Honeybooks, all of my stuff, my workflow of things, I have my clients, whenever anyone inquires to my website, they get an automated or like automated like email response.
Mhm.
So for until I was able to open up my books, I actually had on all of my email responders like when they can expect that I would be opening up like my next year's bookings. I think that that's something that's super important, just the clear communication that way. And then the time for what they would expect for things, for response time, my admin hours throughout the week. I've been really like stern on like keeping my admin hours like certain days throughout the week, and then having my like clients expect that. And then my workflow, I love Honeybooks. I couldn't imagine not having Honeybooks or Dubsado, two totally different platforms, very similar. I know that they're rolling out a lot with Honeybooks. They're rolling out like a tap to pay, which is awesome for like your one-off clients if you're having them come in. But I automate all of my like payments to happen out a week before. So with my Honeybooks program, I have like my service and pricing guide. Clients can select it. It's cool because on there too as well, I have my clients be able to like schedule out like bridal calls if they want to chat with me about like their services or questions. Usually the biggest questions I ever have from clients, and this is one thing that I've really been happy about implementing this past year, is the follow-ups with inquiries for my contracts and my invoice or my follow-ups in order to like create my contracts, and
Mhm.
then my invoices. So you do a great job with like, okay, here's like your like I think it's like 2-3 day follow-up. And then if you don't hear back from them, here's another follow-up and then another
Yeah.
follow-up, just like and then it ultimately kind of like ends with, please let me know if you've like gone another direction or if there's anything else I can do. So that's been a really nice way to kind of like continue to open up that dialogue. I've actually had brides actually follow up with booking because they're like, so sorry, like life got crazy. Thank you for your follow-up. Like I like see that you're really interested in working with me. So and just having those templates there, it's really cool because now Honeybooks, I don't know if Dubsada is doing this, but there's an AI version for messaging for these platforms. So even though I have my templates, I have templates for everything. So I can pull it up when I'm on my phone on the road. But with Honeybooks, they have an AI responder. So whatever comes through in their like inquiry, it'll formulate a response taking like a customized message on what your response would be to someone wanting to book you with their vision, their location, all this. It's really
You're
freaking cool.
joking. That's
It's
gonna change
wild.
the game. Oh my
I
God.
know,
I had
because do
no
you know how much
idea.
time I would spend with being like,
Yes.
hi, thank you for these details. This is what I would like recommend. Like, so it's
Wow.
phenomenal. They don't have it set up for, I haven't seen it in response to like my hair and makeup consult forms. I love my consult forms. That's something I didn't have in years past. Um, but the AI version is freaking cool because sometimes I even have like a bride that responds to me that's like, hey, so I just want to let you know, like, this changed with this. Can we do this or can we do that? And then it'll formulate an AI response where it's like, hey, this has now been drafted. Are you ready to send like a response like this? Or like, here's like a drafted reply. And then I can go in and like change it up where it's like, okay, let me look into this for you. But I have noted that you want to have X, Y, and Z. This sounds lovely. Like, it's really freaking cool
Wow.
with
So
a
much
honey.
less brain power you have to use. Cause like I don't you
Yes.
find that's like the biggest time suck is like we want to be personable and customize our emails, but
Yeah.
it's such a time suck for us, which is why we love HoneyBook, we love Dubsado to automate a lot of it, but you
Yeah.
still want to customize that. I wonder if Dubsado is going to do that. I'm gonna look
They
into
have
that.
to.
That
Yeah,
is
no. So
so cool.
that's been phenomenal about Honeybucks. And so everything's automated, templates. Like I've
Yeah.
always like even before going to BBA, like I was like I had Honeybooks, but I didn't have like I had a newsletter, but it's a huge ass newsletter. And so my newsletters now are all broken down. Like I have like a spray tanning like newsletter. I have it breaks down the difference between like with spray tanning and tanning, what to like look out for. And then I put together a newsletter on like how to prep your skin and hair before wedding day. So I have a list of like all like my favorite go-to like products. So I'm able to diversify like my income out if people want to like purchase things online. I've made really great connections with med spas in the area, hairstylists, just other vendors that can help enhance the bride's overall vision and like results leading up to wedding day, which I highly recommend for any hairstylist or makeup artist to do to connect that way. So I send that all out, like, start to like roll it out like weekly or like every other week. My prep one is like the skin and makeup prep, where it's like all the things that they need to do leading up to day of a year out in advance. And then, yeah, and then just keeps breaking down different newsletters. And then I'll have like a final like check in, like, here's your like prep for the wedding day of like, things to like remember. And even stuff as simple as like, please make sure your vows and your thank you cards are written out before you sit down in the chair because it makes the biggest difference. Like I want you to have the best results. So
Yeah, I
yeah.
love that.
So all that's been very helpful. And then automating out final head count. Okay, so being someone that offers both hair and makeup, the trickiest part is you will have a lot of people want to add on a mix of services. I allow a mix of services for myself. I don't have a problem with it. But if I have someone that comes on, then I have to make sure that they can either do a dual services or either or. That's the trickiest part of like doing multiple and having a head count for things. Does that make sense?
That
So
makes
sometimes
sense.
I'll have like Sally Sue that wants to like do hair and makeup for herself and then four additional makeup services and then like it's like five or six hair. So it's going to be
Yeah.
a mix of services, which again, when it's smaller parties, it's nice for me because not everyone wants to have makeup done or not everyone wants to have hair done. So it works for me. There's a
Yeah.
lot of people out there that run teams who provide kits. They'll only be all hair or all makeup.
Right.
Um, but that's again what works for me. My head counts, I'll do that, have that all automated out in advance, and then have a timeline questionnaire automated out. Having these things automated out, and you're thinking like one step ahead of the game to protect your energy, but also put the bride at the like forefront of
Yeah.
like her feeling like a priority. There are so many hair and makeup artists that don't do timelines or don't do like head counts or like check in for like changes to things. And I've seen it firsthand of brides like being so stressed out for day of, being like, well, when is she going to come? Like,
Yeah.
who is she bringing on to assist with services? Or she's changed or like checked in like a day before, like the wedding day, to get like the final details for the wedding day. Like, I couldn't imagine doing that now, especially when I have weddings that are like a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, or like some I've had like 4 days in a row. And I'm like, the last thing I want to do is do an email check in when that should have been done a week or a month out.
Right. And don't you feel like your brides feel so much more taken care of? Like, because
Yeah.
you're adding in the newsletters, you're doing the timelines. Like, have you
Mhm.
gotten good response from your brides about like
Yeah.
how much better you are with communication, right?
Yes. Yeah. With that price point of like upping your pricing, you have to have that type of communication. If you don't have that communication, it just doesn't reflect on the professionalism there. And we want their day to go just as smooth as they want their day to go as smooth. And
Exactly.
so it just eliminating all like even just like the suggestion of something as simple as like, okay, we're creating your timeline. Like, please keep in mind, like, Airbnbs are a great like location, and even just encouraging to them. It's like, make sure that with your venue, like you're communicating with your venue far out in advance, that like, when you can get access to those venues.
Yes.
Or even if you have an Airbnb, make sure that like you either have a late checkout or you still have it booked going into the next day. Because I've
Yeah.
had brides where they didn't read some of those things and they go, shit, I should have reread that, because they didn't think of their Airbnb um having a checkout at 11, and we had a timeline going until like 1 p.m.
I know.
So having some of that communication in the beginning, I think, is very important, and having some of that stuff sent out. So
So important. So I
yeah.
want to ask if there was anything inside Bridal Boss Academy that I removed, what, but I kept, like, I removed everything, but I kept one thing. What would be the one thing you would like want me to keep that was like pivotal for you?
That's a hard one because I've taken a lot of courses. I'm like, removal. I think one thing that really makes your program very unique is your approach to social media and the like perceived value of what it is that like we're creating and giving out. But also at the same time too, loved like the way that you went into branding and understanding your ideal bride of, okay, what does those venues look like? Because the more that my pricing has gone up and the more that these things, like, I can now kind of get an idea of like, if a bride reaches out to me and they put down a venue, I know if I'm going to work within their budget or not. Oddly
Right?
enough, sometimes.
Right?
But also sometimes too, people will figure out like if they like want to make it work for you. And it also just gives you a heads up too, like the more that you work with some of these venues, like realistically, like what you can expect from them with like timelines for things.
Yeah.
So those were just really good building blocks. I don't think any of that should be taken out. I think one thing that's not talked about enough is like breaking down and getting so micro with your services of like your take home for things, your taxes, like just being financially like literate. I think in the future it'd be really cool for you to bring in like I think you already did this. Maybe you did this. Did you do it with like a tax expert, like tax expert or like a CPA? It'd be really cool for you to like continue to add into your programs. Even with this, someone that helps people understand like the difference between like sole props, LLCs, S corps, but like you need to keep in the profit first. So, like, even just encouraging those things, because I feel like the one thing that is really hard as a business owner in the hair and makeup industry when you're doing your things solo, unless you're chatting with other people, a lot of people can give you really shitty advice when it comes to how they like price themselves. But when you can get so micro and being like, okay, what are the cost of all like my kits for things? Whether you're providing it for a client, or building up your kit, like getting so micro into how we can financially not burn ourselves out and like what
Yeah.
makes most sense for us. Because most people that leave this industry are from burnout, and then they just don't enjoy it anymore, and they're not seeing that income come back in. And so figuring out with yourself your just income you need to do, the balance you need to create in your life, what your ideal client is, I think is just super important. And I'm just trying to think of any other courses. I didn't really have any other courses that helped me really break those things down. So I think where I was at with like my S Corp journey and then working with the programs that I had with you, I think it just kind of had that flow of being like, okay, these are my next steps for what I need to do
I'm so
to
glad
make
you said that because the profit first lesson for me was like one of my favorite pieces. And also
yeah.
just like getting financially literate. Like, I definitely took a note of possibly bringing in like CPI and like continuing that because that's so my values and what I value. And I'm so glad that you were able to like pick up on that because it's not only we want to make a lot of money, we want to know how to manage it. We want to know how to make sure we're paying for our expenses and things like that. Um,
Hmm.
if somebody was on the fence about joining Bridal Boss Academy, what's something you would tell them?
Um, oh God, that's a hard one. I've told so many people about this program. I'm like, it's literally changed my complete perspective of how I run my business.
Thank you.
Um, it allows you to, again, I've said this like twice. It's funny though, because I'm sure other people have been like, oh, it's helped me with building my social media. It's literally just helped me like confidence wise, especially with like my pricing for my packages, how to I don't ever feel like I have to negotiate my pricing with my clientele. Like I don't ever have to feel like I have to like fight for the client. Like
Yeah.
they like either take it or leave it. And perceived value, I think, is so important. I talk with so many hair and makeup artists in the area with perceived value, and they're like, I don't know why people aren't booking. I don't know why people aren't booking. And I think it's really important that if people aren't understanding your value, you need to like break down like what can I do better in order to attract that type of bride. Whether it's like I want to work with glamour waves and I want to have like the soft glam like makeup looks. Okay, so who are the people out there that are killing it? Take a note from like their book with things, being able to see, but also you can't compare yourself to what other people are doing. You have a voice and a talent and gift that no one else has or will ever possess, and no one ever can do it quite like you. And I think it's really important to not get lost in the comparison with things, but also you just have to consistently work to become a better version of yourself with your business. I think that that's one thing with the social media aspect. There's a constant comparison game with it. And I feel like when I got into Bridal Boss Academy, one thing that had also helped me was I actually unfollowed a bunch of other like, and it wasn't anything against any other hair and makeup artists in the area, but or like clients as well. But I really try to fuel like my feed with things that inspired me to help keep me on like a good trajectory with things, but just really focusing on, okay, am I posting things that are going to attract my ideal bride? Am I going to be booking things that will compromise like what my ideal bride could be on these days? So it helps you be able to like make better decisions, both like emotionally within your business and financially within your business with Bridal Boss Academy. So that's long-winded, but I hope that helps. Yeah.
Thank you. I so appreciate your time. I so appreciate you pulling up stats and finances for me. Like, that's so my vibe. I love that. And I am so beyond proud of you that you
Yeah.
are hitting your six-figure year, that you already are booking out into 2025. Like, the sky is the limit for you. I feel like you're just going to keep increasing your packages and doing so well for yourself. And I just can't wait to see where your business goes. And I
Yeah.
would love everyone to be able to find you. So what is your Instagram? How can we connect with you?
So my Instagram is Alexis Michael HMUA, both on Instagram, TikTok. I actually get a lot of clients from TikTok now, which is kind of cool. So don't overlook TikTok. But one more piece of advice I do want to give is no matter where you're at within like the season of your business, you can still hop in and out of this program. I felt like I was pretty established in my business, and I feel like no matter where you're at, whether you're starting off, you're pretty well established, or pretty like established within your business, like there's always so much room for like growth and improvement. But even at busier times of the year, like don't be afraid to like just like keep checking in and don't compare your progress in the course to other people's progress.
Yeah.
Because we all our seasons of our business are so different. And just there's one thing I've really liked about the community that you have is like you have a great place where you can like bounce off ideas with other people. Everyone's like-minded, but they all bring like unique skill traits and perspectives to the table. So that's one thing I do really appreciate. So yeah.
I love that. And I love the community. And we're moving over into the new community. So I hope I